Bloopatone.
Hey everyone, this is Eric Keller for Bloopatone. In this video, I wanted to talk about how much I love ZBrush for the iPad. And specifically, how much I love scanning 3D objects directly into ZBrush for the iPad using the iPad Pro. It's really easy to do and it's a lot of fun. So I'm going to show you the basics on how to do it. It doesn't take very long to learn. And then also just show you some of the experiments that I've been doing, just roaming around the countryside, scanning whatever I think is kind of cool. So I'm going to start on the home screen for ZBrush for the iPad and go down to the buttons on the bottom left, and you start the capture process by pressing on the capture button down here. So once you press the capture button, it switches over to the iPad's scanning software, so you can see the video of the scene that I want to scan. I'll press the continue button, and it creates this 3D box around the object that I want to scan. I can use these little handles to kind of narrow down or define the area that I want the scanning software to pay attention to. It takes a little bit of practice to work with these little handles here, and I think you should try and make it a little bit bigger than what you want to scan just to make sure you get everything that you can. It's not perfect, but it works pretty well. Once you're done, you press the continue button and the scanning process starts. So I have auto mode turned on, which you can see in the upper right hand corner, which means that as I walk around the object, it's automatically going to take pictures. And you can see it's sort of forming the 3D object out of these pixels here in the center. And I also have this little indicator showing as I rotate around it how it's taking these images. You can also turn the sound down and you get these little sound cues, which is also helpful. But really, it just comes down to following the instructions on the screen, and it's pretty much that easy. And so you keep walking around until you complete the circle to do the first pass of the scan. Now, once you complete a pass, you have the option of doing another pass. You don't have to do it, but it's usually recommended. You also have the option of flipping the object. I can't really do that in this case, so I'm just going to start a new pass, and it's kind of the same thing. I'm just kind of maybe trying to adjust the angle a little bit to see if I can capture a bit more of the object. Just following the instructions and walking around the object to get as much as I possibly can. So for this pump here, I did actually do 3 passes. I've edited this down a little bit for time. But once it completes that third pass, I get a little screen here, and I'm going to press the finish button, and then it's going to start generating the model. And this usually takes a few minutes. Generally, I haven't had to wait more than like 5 or 6 minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit this just so you don't have to sit here and watch the screen real quick so we can see the result. Okay, so give it another second, and it finishes. And then it's going to say, do I want to open the model? Which of course I do. And here it is in ZBrush for the iPad. First thing you're going to want to do is make sure you save the project. So it saves the model with the textures. And don't forget to do that. And then what I'll do is I'll often save these to Dropbox, and then I can open it up on my desktop version of ZBrush. Okay, so I've opened it up in ZBrush 2026.2 for the desktop. And same project, didn't have to do anything special to open it up. If I go in here to the texture map and turn off the texture map, you can see that's what the model looks like. And if I turn on wireframe, you can see here is the topology. So the topology is kind of a typical Dynamesh scanning topology. It's triangles. It does have UVs, automatic UVs, but now I can use the ZBrush tools to sculpt and model this and turn it into a usable prop. So I'll admit I'm addicted to scanning stuff into ZBrush because it's so easy and it's fun. So here's some other experiments that I've tried while wandering around here in France. So many cool objects that you can find with interesting textures. Some things work better than others. This crane here was probably a bit too large, but I was still able to capture a lot of really cool details, something that I could use in kit bashing or as a source for textures or even just inspiration. And so I'm doing a little bit of a time lapse here, so it's speed up the process. But you can see I kind of wandered around here, making sure not to, fall off the pier and into the water. But overall, it came out pretty well, considering. So I actually did a couple scans of this, and then I could just use the subtools to kind of combine them together and place them with the overlap. So you can see this is what it looks like on the desktop. And don't forget, you can use like the extract brushes to extract some of these cool rust textures and turn that into your own detailing brush as well. Here's a weird bit of architecture that I couldn't resist scanning. It's like these wooden shutters around this curved fountain. So, it's France, so you could find lots of weird old stuff in some of these towns here. I don't know what I'll use this for, but it's such a cool detail. I don't think I ever would have thought of this on my own. And it's nice to make a 3D model out of it too, because you get all that cool like moss and stone damage and rust and everything that comes through in the texture. This one I think came out pretty well. You notice I can't obviously walk all the way around the object. I can only do like 180 degrees. That's okay. You don't necessarily have to complete every single pass to get a decent scan. If you think you've done enough, you can hit the finish button and usually you'll get a pretty good scan out of it. I did get a few holes in there. So it's always possible to do a few scans of an object and then combine them as subtools and fix some of those holes, or you could just fix the holes as you remodel it. Here's a really cool column that I found that has an awesome texture on it. Of course, the mistake I made in this scan is I was in a church and I forgot to take my hat off, so apologies for that. Kind of disrespectful. Didn't mean it, just kind of being absent-minded. But I got as much of the column as I could possibly get. Again, I can't get all the way around it, but I could get most of it. And just a little section here. And it came out pretty well. The texture is really nice. I can always use projection to project this texture onto like a cylinder or something like that, something with better UVs. So lots of possibilities for creating very cool models and very cool details off of that. It's a great way to capture both models and of course textures as well. So here is another fountain with some cool lion heads on it. The only problem with this scan is the light was so bright and the shadows were so strong that the contrast and the lighting created some holes in the final model. So even though I did several turns around the model, I couldn't quite get the whole thing, and you'll notice in the final version I have half of it missing. So the lesson here is it's probably better to scan outdoors on overcast days where you don't have such strong shadows and such strong contrast. So I'll have to give it another try. Luckily, I live close enough to the fountain that I can go and give it another try at some point when it's cloudy. I did another scan of the base here, as you can see, to try and get a bit more of it. And then in the desktop version, I went and combined the two objects, to get a little bit more coverage there. Not perfect, but it's a great start for a model, and I could definitely turn this into something cool that I could use as an environment prop or something like that, or just for inspiration. It's pretty awesome. So here's some really cool details in the exterior of a church. Again, I can't do a full 360, but that's okay. I can get a decent amount of it. So I'm just trying to adjust the box. It takes a little bit of practice to get these handles to work. I think that's kind of more of the Apple scanning software than anything related to ZBrush directly. But the main thing is what ZBrush has done is they've created a bridge inside ZBrush between the iPad scanning software and ZBrush, so that once you finish the scan, it just opens up in ZBrush with the textures. That's kind of the whole point of it. So it just makes things very convenient and very easy. And of course, as I've mentioned before, a lot of fun. I did say, I keep showing these things on the desktop, but I do want to emphasize that you can pretty much do anything in the iPad version of ZBrush that you can on the desktop version. So if you want to do multiple scans and combine them as subtools, you can totally do that on the iPad version. You don't need the desktop version to do that. I just opened up everything on the desktop version just to show how the iPad and the desktop version are completely compatible. You can move projects between the two of them. It's no problem. So here it is in the iPad, the result of the scan. And if I take a look here in the desktop, there's the result of the scan in the desktop. It's the same thing. Same model, same textures, same everything. And it's pretty neat. Here is a little knocker in the shape of a fish on a door. This scan, I think, came out really well. Again, can't get a full 360, but for this one, it's about the right size for a scan. The other objects are fairly large, but this one I think is just about the perfect size. So I was able to get a really nice scan of just the knocker with all that really cool rust texture. I think the fact that the lighting was more even on this one and it's not a very shiny object means that the result was much cleaner. I've got a few holes here and there in the shadows, but I can easily fix that. I was mostly interested in just getting the sculptural elements there of the knocker and the cool textures. And here's what it looks like on the desktop. I think it's a really cool scan. I'm very proud of this one. Glad nobody came home when I was trying to scan their door. So that was lucky as well. Got to be discreet about these things. So I just want to kind of show some of the other things that I've scanned wandering around France here. So here's a really cool sculpture, a Roman wall in a sort of archaeological site. Another a Roman element here. This was from inside a museum. That one is super awesome. Here is a raccoon skull that I have in my own collection. I think this is the first thing I tried to scan. And then some other scans that I took. This one is from a graveyard, very super creepy grave, quite sad. A lot of cool stuff like that. And then, of course, wander around the forests here in France. You get some really awesome trees, maybe not a complete scan, but some great moss elements. Definitely something I can use as a starter for creating trees. Here's a cool fence by the ocean. And of course, some rocks by the ocean as well, and more trees and lots of trees and rocks. And again, this is great source material for all kinds of cool things, and also just great fun to do. It's amazing how much of the detail comes through. I love it when you get some of the moss and the leaves. Here's another section of that same church, a clock from a museum, an old clock, parts of Roman walls and castle walls. Again, this is a really cool one from the inside of an old abbey with some awesome moss on it. It's part of a castle here. And then some more walls. Lots and lots of walls and old rocks. And for some reason, a cactus in a pot. This is part of the abbey on Ile de Ré, another part of the abbey. And then this is a really cool, freaky cherub statue from a different abbey. And so just neat stuff. And I can't wait to start using this in some of my own environments. I'm a sucker for these kinds of things, especially the medieval stuff and the Roman stuff. Just really, really cool. So those are some examples, some of the scans that I've done. So I wanted to finish with a few tips that I've learned in the process of using the 3D scanner and the iPad and ZBrush. This is a scan of a sculpture of Saint Michel that I did. It's a pretty cool sculpture overall. If I turn off the texture and turn on the wireframe, you can see it's pretty low poly. Not a whole lot of detail there. And then even in the texture, it's not great. But it's a great basis for a sculpt that I'm working on. So, and I've just been playing with this on the iPad. So I've been doing all the sculpting, even though this is the desktop. This sculpture is done entirely on the iPad. And it's just something I've been noodling with, when I watch TV or when I hang out someplace and I happen to have my iPad with me. It's really nice to be able to be portable with ZBrush. So I'm just playing with it, trying to improve like the feathers and other. It's a work in progress. You can see the legs aren't attached and they haven't really been worked on yet. But I played with, doing the dragon and the armor, and also getting more detail in the face and the hair and so on. So it's kind of a fun way to start a sculpt with the scan. It's great for anatomy practice. Some of the things that I've learned is like, usually if I get holes and that kind of stuff in the scan, it's usually because it's not enough light. So what I'd like to experiment with in the future is get some portable lights, maybe, battery powered or USB powered, just so I can make sure that I have enough light to get everything on there. The other thing that I learned the hard way on this one is that I did the scan. It was great. I left. Where the church where this sculpture is probably, an hour and a half away from my house. So it's not exactly easy for me to go back there. But I get home, I start playing with the sculpt. I think it's great. I'm turning it around. I'm trying to look at details here in the scan. What I neglected to do is I didn't take any reference images, which is really dumb. I should have taken a lot of reference photos. That way I can go in and look at the photos and see the places where I don't have enough detail in the scan, and I can kind of figure out what the sculpture is doing, especially if I was trying to do something that was, a precise replication of the sculpture, which I decided to just kind of take it in my own direction. But you'll notice that on some of the video that I've shown, I've been recording using a TechSmith screen recorder for the iPad while I've been making the scan. So that's a great way to make sure that you have reference from all angles as well as the scan, because I can always go back and watch those videos and see the spots that I missed. So just a few ideas there for making sure that you have everything you need to make a good sculpt based on your scans. So that's sort of where I'm at the moment, and that's how this guy is going. I think it'll look pretty cool if I ever get around to finishing it. It's kind of like a little hobby sculpt that I've been doing. All right, so there you have it. I love ZBrush for the iPad. Even beyond just the scanning capabilities, overall the app is fantastic. I think it's a huge improvement to the interface. And I look forward to future versions. I only talked about the scanning aspect in this video, but I'll talk more about ZBrush for the iPad in future videos. Now, if you do want to do the scanning, you want to make sure that you have the right iPad, something that's compatible and has the right type of camera built into it. So this is an iPad Pro 13-inch M4, and so this works just fine. I've had it for a couple years and it works great. But you want to make sure older iPads might not be able to do the scanning. So double check with the Maxon website. Make sure that your iPad has the right specs if this is something you want to do. And please remember to like and subscribe. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you next time, and we'll talk more and more about ZBrush for the iPad.
Bloopatone.